Miss Maddie, Mrs. Kelly, or Miss Sweet Pea. So like I said, everyone knows me by a little bit of a different name. But today I want to talk about one of my favorite things. This is a painting technique that I did a lot in college. Just whenever I did fun sketches, or just to, when I had a really fun idea I wanted to do and just kind of do it in my sketchbook. Nothing that I was going to showcase, but just to especially de-stress. And right now we are in starting our third week of our quarantine, or self-isolation, or social distancing, or physical distancing. We're spending a lot of time inside with family, so I wanted to show you another fun way that you can make like a paint while you're at home. So I'm gonna take a sip of my coffee. So good. And I'm gonna show you a painting I did yesterday using this method. So this is using coffee paint. So this is definitely a shout out to our first responders, our medical staff, our essential workers, anyone who's out there on the front line trying to help us defeat this virus. You are so much appreciated. What you are doing and the long hours you are working is just incredible. So I definitely want to start out by saying thank you. And I figured doing a painting like this in coffee was probably a good material, because I'm sure that's the only thing a lot of our essential workers are running on right now. So please know how much you are appreciated. Okay. So now let's move on to making our paint. So the first thing you are going to need is a coffee pod. So if you don't use coffee pods and you use either the recyclable pods, you can do the same thing that I'm doing right here. Try to put a filter in it. If you have one of the paper filters, it will help. Or if you just do regular coffee and coffee filters, you can do the same thing, but you're going to want to put a bowl or something so you don't completely push through your filter. You're gonna want to do a little bit of a lighter hand in the next process. You're gonna want your coffee. Make sure if you're using a pod, let it sit out for about 10 minutes to cool off, or else you're gonna burn yourself. 2 bowls, a spoon, paper towel, and some warm water. So you want to make sure you use warm water. It doesn't have to be hot, but you definitely don't want to use cold water. You won't get the same results. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to grab your first bowl and your coffee pod. So I just ripped off the foil on mine, or the plastic or whatever is on the top, and I knocked out about half of the coffee grinds, because you don't need all of them. You just have a mess. So you only need about half. Then you're going to fill up, a little closer. Boop. I'm going to fill up your pod. You don't want it to go over. So we fill it almost all the way to the top. And then you just want to take your spoon and you really want to agitate those coffee grinds. You want to be careful you don't push too hard. If you push too hard, you'll rip right through the filter and your coffee pods, and you will have coffee grinds all throughout your paint, and you don't want that. If you get a few grinds in there, don't worry. I'll show you how you can get them out, okay? So you want to make sure you really agitate that, mix it up real well. Make sure you scrape from the bottom and then push back down. And we're going to do this 1 or 2 more times. So you can see how, if it looks dark enough, then you can only do it 2 times. If you want it to be a little bit darker, do it a 3rd time. Fill it up. Okay, I think I'm only gonna do this one twice, and I'm gonna do the same exact thing in my second bowl. I like to do it in 2 bowls, so the pigments or the color that's inside my bowl will be a little bit different, so I can get some different colors in my painting. So, put a little bit more water. I'm gonna do the same thing all over again. So this coffee paint is very similar to a watercolor. So you're almost like making a liquid watercolor. It's very light, so it does take a long time. It's a really great activity if you have, an hour to kill and you really want to work on some of your painting skills. Okay. Do it one more time. Fill her up. Look pretty good. So then once you're done with this, if you recycle them, or you can just throw them in the trash. Whatever you do with them, you can get rid of them now. Throw that away, and then you're gonna let this sit for about 10 minutes. I know that seems really counterproductive. We just spent all the time. We're gonna let it sit for about 10 minutes, and then I will show you what happens. It's going to separate, and we're actually gonna dump some of the water that's on top out, so we have a little bit of a darker pigment or color. And I'm going to grab an extra bowl. So this extra bowl is just gonna be for me to dump out that extra water. So if you can see here, it's kind of hard to see, it's a little bit darker down at the bottom than it is at the top. So make sure you're really careful. You don't want to mix this up, because you mix it up and it defeats the whole purpose. You just want to grab it very gently and just dump some of that water out. You're going to do that a couple times. So let that settle. You're going to go to your second one. Once again, we have the darker at the bottom. Dump some of that out. Once this one settles down a little bit, dump it a little bit. Same thing, once it settles down a little bit, dump a little bit of that out. So now it looks like we don't have any paint here, but I promise there's a lot of paint in here. That gives you a ton. Then you just want to get one more bowl just with plain water. So this is so you can make really light washes. So you can just add more water on your brush. So whenever I'm coffee painting, I like to have 2 different brushes. I usually don't do very large paintings just because it does take a long time. You have to really build up your layers just because it's not super pigmented. So I like to have a really nice fluffy brush. This is a watercolor brush. It's a number 4, just from Michaels, really fluffy. And then I like to have a little bit of a smaller brush. I don't know if you can see that, a little bit of a smaller brush. Just, this is more for acrylic paint, but I think it does really nice with making really nice, sharp, thick, or just nice, sharp, dark lines with the coffee. It really picks up a lot of that pigment or color. So pigment's another name for color. Picks up a lot of that color, and it really makes a nice, dark line. So I'm only gonna demonstrate very quickly because, like I said, it does take quite a while to do this. So I'm not gonna take up your whole entire afternoon. So the first thing you want to start with, like a little drawing. You don't want to draw too dark because the coffee is pretty light. So you want to make sure you keep your lines pretty light. So like I said, this is probably a project that's more geared towards upper middle school or high school or adults even. Like I said, it's one of my favorite things. I did a lot in college. So you want to first decide, just like when you're working with watercolor, where your lights and where your darks are going to be. So once you figure out where you want your lights to be, I'm gonna turn this around. You can see a little bit. I'm just gonna draw a really super light line where I'm gonna divide some of my highlights here on my cup. I know that's very difficult to see. And same thing, like I have a shadow here, and this is more gonna be like a mid-ground right on my coaster. I'm gonna go in with my big fluffy brush first. I'm gonna pick up some of that pigment. I can also use my paper towel to knock off some of that water. And I'm gonna start with my darkest part first. I'm gonna start with my coffee so I can kind of see how dark this pigment's going to be. Ooh, this one's nice. So you just want to paint that in. We can grab a little bit of water to blend that out. A little bit more of our coffee water. Now we have the start of our coffee. Then we can also do the same thing with, I'm gonna do the back of my mug here. So I don't want it to be quite as dark as my coffee is. Obviously I'm gonna put more layers on top of my coffee, but I also wanna make sure I can see where my coffee ends and where my cup begins. So I grab some coffee water, and I'm also gonna just mix it with a little bit of my clean water. I'm gonna dab it on my paper towel to see a little bit of excess water off. And I'm just going to paint where the lip of my cup is above my coffee. So now we can kind of see where my coffee is and then where that top lip is. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to paint all of my mug that I want to be my middle ground. So that's like a mid-grade. It's not too dark. It's not too light. So I'm going to grab some of my coffee water. I'm gonna grab a little bit of my regular water, dab a little bit on my paper towel, I'm gonna paint in where I want my mid-tone. So it's gonna be about right in the middle. A little bit more. A little bit of plain water just to blend that out. So now I have kind of where my mid-tone is going to be. Now I'm going to go around to the back and make my dark. So I'm going to go into this back bowl. I'm going to see how dark this is. We're going to see if this one's lighter or darker than this one. So it looks like it's a little bit lighter, which is just fine. To help me out later, I'm just gonna flip these. So I go from my plain water to my lighter coffee to my darkest coffee water. And I'm going to make this really light here because that's gonna be part of my highlight. So we just have a nice just base down. So I would do the same exact thing. I'm gonna paint in my shadow on my coaster here. I have my shadow. I'm gonna have a little bit of a shadow right in the front, just right around my coffee mug. Okay, so then I would do my whole painting in just my bases right now. And then if you take the back of your hand and if you go over your painting, if it's cold, or if it's cool to the touch, that means it's still wet. So you wanna wait till it dries. So do all your bases first, and then just keep layering and layering and layering your coffee, and it will slowly get darker. So then I just wanna demonstrate real fast before we go, this little thin brush. So I really like this, because if I really just wanna make sure it's really pigmented, all I'm going to do is I'm gonna kind of turn my bowl. So this is all just really nice and dark. I'm gonna take my brush and I'm just gonna dip it into there and grab a little bit of that up. And let's say I want a really dark line on my handle here. So I'm just gonna paint right inside that handle. Grab a little bit more. Now I have that really dark line right inside my handle. So then I would finish up this whole thing. And it just is, like I said, it's fun, it's stress relieving, it takes up a pretty big chunk of time because you are waiting a pretty long time for it to dry. But it's fun. So if you do make one, please, please, please post it. I'd love to see it. If you have any questions about it, just comment below and I will try my best to get back and answer them. And just one more big shout out, always to all my kiddos. I miss you so much. I hope you are all doing so well. And I hope you're making fantastic art. So we will see you very shortly, I hope. I'm gonna try to make another video, but I hope I see you in class sooner than later. So until then, guys, we'll see you later. Bye.